A 72-year-old woman, famous for once running a fish and chip shop outside of Brisbane, has managed to dominate day one of Labor Party's 50th National Conference. Pauline Hanson might be only 5'7" tall, but boy, she casts a shadow long enough to eclipse an entire convention centre. Have a listen to the way in which South Australian Premier Peter Malinauskas introduced the Prime Minister this morning.
Our opponents are going to spend all their time worrying about us, worrying about each other, and then worrying about themselves. And while this occupies their attention, ours is only focused on the great Australian project.
After which, Anthony Albanese took the stage and spent a good deal of time talking about Pauline Hanson. By the way, is it just me, or do you at home also cringe when you hear Labor politicians talk about how they're focused on the great Australian project? Australia isn't a social experiment. It's not a group assignment for uni student politicians. Australia's my country. Australia's your country. Australia is not their project. Just on that, let me show you the Prime Minister being welcomed into the Labor conference. And if you want a clue as to why One Nation is now neck and neck with Labor in the polls, have a listen to the song being played as Anthony Albanese enters the room.
Picture this. Labor holds its 50th National Conference, stands at the podium and declares with a straight face that it is absolutely, positively not obsessed with Pauline Hanson, then spends the next several hours talking about almost nothing else. Mate, that is not a rebuttal, that is a confession with extra steps. Quick favour, if you are enjoying this breakdown, let me see you hit that subscribe button right now. Over 90% of viewers have not yet. It costs nothing, takes a second, and means the world to us. Thanks if you did. Now, back to the circus.
This is Australia. I'm not sure that when Gangajang sang those words back in 1985, they imagined this is Australia, where 3 men a day would be changing their birth certificates to become female in New South Wales alone. Or this is Australia, with 1/3 of the population born overseas. Or this is Australia, a place where 15 people shot dead on Bondi Beach by alleged Islamists, and the government responds with a $60 million grant to fight Islamophobia. Or this is Australia, South Australians told that if they want affordable electricity, well, they might need to tolerate regular blackouts. Or this is Australia, a place where Labor Party members demand the removal of the Union Jack from our national flag. Or that we'd have 3 national flags and that the national flag would not be the main national flag. Well, this is Australia under Anthony Albanese. It's an Australia that's almost unrecognisable from a generation ago, and that's why 30% of people are now telling pollsters they'll be voting for One Nation. Pauline Hanson might be a bit rough around the edges, but a lot of people appear to have decided they'd rather a flawed Pauline Hanson and their country back than an ABC-approved Anthony Albanese and the country becoming more unrecognisable by the day. So, after the crowd was told that Australia was the Labor Party's great project, and after the most left-wing Prime Minister we've probably ever had walked into choruses of "This is Australia," and after boasts that the conference would focus on the nation rather than on point scoring against political enemies, here's what Anthony Albanese had to say.
Here's the scene. Anthony Albanese walks out to This Is Australia, a tune from 1985, while the crowd cheers a vision of the nation that feels to plenty of ordinary Australians like it is being narrated from a different postcode entirely. Between the nostalgia and the hall, you've got gender identity debates, immigration numbers climbing, the shockwaves of the Bondi Beach shooting still settling, energy bills doing their best impression of a rollercoaster, and a flag conversation that will not die. It's less a victory lap and more a national identity crisis with a house band. And then there's the phrase of the day, the Great Australian Project. Sounds inspiring until you actually sit with it. A project is something you build in a lab, tweak and adjust when the results disappoint you. Most Australians do not think of their country as a project, they think of it as home. That's the gap Pauline Hanson keeps finding, and she wasn't even in the room.
Because beyond One Nation's personality clashes, policy confusion, conspiracy theories and candidate chaos, and regardless of who leads the Liberals to the next election, in every way that matters, the Liberals, Nationals and One Nation are already a coalition. It's not just that they need each other to form government, they agree with each other about what they want to do in government.
What really annoys me is Labor, and the Liberals do it too, pretending that One Nation are a rabble unfit to govern while they themselves are without blemish, all the while ruining the country. Take Albanese's criticisms of One Nation. First, he says One Nation is beset by personality clashes. And Labor isn't? I wonder if former Albanese cabinet ministers Ed Husic or Mark Dreyfus, or what about former Senator Fatima Payman, would agree that personality clashes and squabbles, they're exclusive to One Nation. One Nation is beset by personality clashes. Remember last year when Tanya Plibersek, a rival for Anthony Albanese's position, and so, given the rather dour portfolio of Minister for Water, was put in a position where she might end up on the end of a kiss from the PM. I'm going to tell you, Barnaby Joyce showed more affection for his dog than the now Social Services Minister showed for her Labor leader during that moment. Well, next the PM went on to say that One Nation can't be taken seriously because of what he called policy confusion. We'll talk about the pot calling the kettle black. I mean, One Nation have policy confusion? This from a Prime Minister whose Treasurer announced the budget and then spent a month trying to explain what it actually meant. Labor unveils tax policy the way IKEA sells furniture. Here's the box, good luck finding the instructions. And he criticises One Nation for policy confusion. As for Albanese mocking One Nation because of what he called, quote unquote, conspiracy theories. Come on. Labor insists that a clerical entry in the Office of Birth, Deaths and Marriages can turn a man into a woman. By all means, interrogate One Nation's Malcolm Roberts over some of the strange things he may or may not believe. He is fair game. But no one is buying the line that Labor is the party of common sense, not when they won't even acknowledge basic biology. And one more thing. Albanese said this.
In every way that matters, the Liberals, Nationals and One Nation are already a coalition. It's not just that they need each other to form government, they agree with each other about what they want to do in government.
Talk about hypocrisy. Yes, Conservative parties exchange preferences and occasionally cooperate. That's called politics. But Anthony Albanese didn't become Prime Minister through, immaculate conception. Labor relies on preferences too, most notably from the Greens, whose agenda on the economy, energy, borders, defence and numerous social issues would be utterly ruinous to this country, and he knows it. But apparently preference deals are only scandalous when somebody else benefits from them. And that's the curious thing about today's Labor Party. It devoted the opening day of its national conference assuring Australians it wasn't obsessed with One Nation before proving that Pauline Hanson was the most influential person not invited to the conference. For a party supposedly building the great Australian project, Labor seems very preoccupied with a woman from Ipswich. Perhaps that's because she's not treating Australia like her own personal project.
Now, here is where it gets properly entertaining. Albanese rattles off reasons One Nation cannot be trusted. Personality clashes, he says, apparently forgetting Labor's own history of leadership tension that has occasionally looked like a soap opera, missing only the dramatic piano sting. Policy confusion, he says, from a party whose budget explanations sometimes read like flat-pack furniture instructions translated twice. conspiracy theories, he says, while defending policy positions on gender that plenty of everyday Australians consider common sense, not fringe thinking. And the finale, accusing the Coalition and One Nation of being secretly aligned, delivered by a Prime Minister who leans on Greens' preferences to govern. That is not a glass house. That is a greenhouse. Here is the honest read. People are not drifting toward One Nation because they have lost their minds. They are doing it because they want their country run like a home, not managed like a spreadsheet. Call it a preference for continuity, accountability, and being spoken to like adults instead of subjects in an experiment. Labor came to build unity and walked out proving the opposition's argument for them. Thanks so much for watching. Please don't forget to drop your thoughts in the comments below.